Good morning. All right, we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody. We're going to be working on Module 9, Lesson 4 today. Okay, we're going to be talking about understanding taxes because that's such a fun topic. Okay, I don't care if you are Democrat or Republican, conservative, liberal, taxes makes everybody a little grumpy. All right. Nobody loves paying taxes. So it's stuff, but it is a reality of life. It's something that as you graduate or if you're working, you already know, or as you get into the workforce and stuff like that at some point, it's stuff, taxes are a reality. And the reality is that you already pay taxes in some ways. Every time you go to the store and you buy something, you pay a sales tax, right? So whether you realize it or not, you've been involved in taxes for a long time, but as you get older, it will become more and more a part of your life. And honestly, it's a pain in the tuchus. So let's talk about it. So what are the standards and stuff? We are going to be looking at factors that influence this, the type of taxes and stuff. We're going to look at the different levels of tax, federal, state, local tax, and look a little bit at Nevada in particular and compare it to other states because every state is different in their tax. Some have multiple, some have one or the other. And then what determines what rate you pay. Okay, so we'll kind of get into that. So for bell ringer, I'm curious. Any of you had taxes taken out of a check already? Maybe you started working or you've had a summer job or a temporary job and you had taxes taken out. Any of you experienced that? You get your paycheck and it's less than you expected. It's less than you expected. Any of you? Any of you gotten a paycheck and noticed taxes taken out? So if you have like a job in no, but soon. Okay. Yeah. When you start working, when you get that first, real job, this PayPal count, it's stuff. I don't think PayPal takes out taxes. I think you have to pay it out of that. But I don't think PayPal takes out taxes. Now it might depend on the type of transaction, maybe. But like what I mean is like you go somewhere and they pay you every 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? Though if you work for somebody and they pay you through PayPal, then maybe. So anybody getting a paycheck yet? Or maybe you have a part-time job and then you notice that taxes get taken out? Good morning. Morning, Lucy. We're talking about taxes. Such a fun topic. Little sarcasm there. Yeah, when you worked before? Yes. So like I said, maybe you're not working right now, but if you've ever had like a summer job or a temporary job or a part-time job or something like that, it's some jobs are under the table, right? Like if you babysit or you go do some special service, and maybe they just pay you cash on the side or something like that. So maybe you haven't experienced that. So maybe you have worked and hadn't had taxes taken out. And that's not uncommon, when you're younger. I had plenty of jobs where I didn't pay taxes on it, like babysitting and things like that. But or help. I remember my dad has his own business, so I'd go help him out and he'd pay me 20 bucks for the day, or you know what I mean? Something like that to when I was young. And stuff. So, but when you got that first real job, and you're getting that paycheck. So I remember my first real job was at Sears and I worked in the kids clothing section and I was so excited to get my paychecks. I was saving for a car and I was like, "Whoa, they took so much when you're making barely minimum wage, it hurts when they take it out, right? It hurts. You're like, I need that paycheck." Any of you ever watched the movie Jerry Maguire? It's from the 90s. Tom Cruise, Cuba Gooding Jr. Great movie. If you ever just looking for, it's like so good. But there's this scene, he's like, "Show me the money." Yeah, no, it's interesting at first, and then yeah, believe me, like I said, I don't care where you are on the political spectrum. Nobody's ever really excited to actually have the money taken away from them. Like, who doesn't want to collect all their money? You know what I mean? Like, let's be honest. I don't care if you make $1 billion a year or $10,000 a year. Like, people want to hold on to their money. I mean, that's because you work for it. You're like, that's my money. So nobody's ever excited to see their money go. It's not that exciting. So what are some of the levels of tax? Okay, so there's a couple different levels of tax. So federal tax. So this is often what you see held from your check, and you have no say in this, right? So when you get that real job, and when I say real job, working for a company or something where they cut you a check and they have to pay, they have to withhold tax. So usually Social Security is part of that, federal tax is a part of that, and stuff. So oftentimes the way federal tax is paid is it's withheld from your check. So there was what you made, what you paid. So every check I get paid twice a month on the 10th and the 25th. Taxes are withheld. Okay. And so a percentage of my income is taken out and withheld. So I don't even get it. Then there's state tax. So everybody pays some kind of state tax. Okay. So there's a couple different ways you can pay it. It's either income tax or it's sales tax. So for example, Nevada, we have sales tax. So I don't pay taxes in Nevada till I go spend. Okay. So when I go buy a car, or if I go to the grocery store or to a restaurant, or if I get my hair done, or if I go buy a couch, any service, right? Any goods I buy, a TV, whatever you buy, a new bike for my kid or something like that, you know what I mean? I will pay a sales tax on that. So that's how the state gets some of their money. When you go to the DMV, you got to register your car and things like that. That's a tax, paying it to them, right? To the state. So in the state of Nevada, our current sales tax rate is 8.23%. So for example, when you go to purchase your first car, if and when that day comes, or if it's already come or something like that, you will have to pay an 8.23% tax. So let's say you buy a $10,000 car. You got to budget another 8% on top of that. So roughly another $800 that you'll have to pay on top of the price of the car. And that tax goes to the state. Okay. Now, not every state has sales tax. Some have usually it's one or the other. So you have sales tax. Most states have sales tax. Okay. So this is the common way. There's a few, though, that have what's called income tax. Okay. Good morning, Miss Carter. We are talking about the amazing topic of taxes.
Oh, yay. Just in the nick of time.
I know. I told them, I said, I don't care where you are on the political spectrum. Nobody ever is excited to look at their paycheck and see money go out the door.
It's never fun. It's like, that's my money.
Exactly. So I'm going over some of the different levels of tax, and then we're going to get into the notebook and stuff. So federal tax, that's withheld from your check. Pretty much universally, nothing you can do get around that. Okay. State tax can come in a couple different forms. It can be income tax or sales tax. So for example, in Nevada, we have sales tax. So once I get my paycheck, when me and Miss Carter get paid twice a month, okay, the 10th and the 25th, we're like, woohoo, all right. Federal tax is keeping out, but I haven't paid my state tax yet. So I pay my state tax when I go buy something. So the more I buy, the more I pay in taxes. The less I spend, the less I pay in taxes, okay, because it's that percentage on top of things. Some states, though, have income tax. So, for example, Oregon, where I'm from, it's taken out of your check like a federal tax, okay, except that percentage goes to, so a certain percentage of the paycheck goes to the federal government, and then a percentage goes to the state. So, for example, in Oregon right now, the income tax is 11%. So it doesn't matter if you're going to spend a lot of money or not spend your money. Off the bat, before you get your check in Oregon, they take 11% gone. Now, the one nice thing is when you go into a store in Oregon and it says something's $5, guess what you pay? $5. So that is actually kind of nice, where it's like, it's actually the price when you buy a car. That's actually the price you pay. So there isn't the extra tax because you already paid it. You paid it in your income. So before I even got my tax, they took it. Okay. The question often becomes, which way do I pay higher tax? Do I pay higher tax when I pay income tax or sales tax? And the answer is it depends. If you spend a lot of money, then you're going to pay more in sales tax. But if you tend not to spend a lot of money, so you're not buying new cars all the time, you're not buying expensive items all the time, actually you pay less tax with sales tax. So for me personally, I like sales tax because I don't tend to buy a lot of big ticket items. And so it ends up being a lesser percent. But if you're somebody who spends, you can actually end up paying more through sales tax. So it really depends on your spending habits. If you spend a lot, then income tax is your friend. Okay. If you don't spend a lot, or you're a little more conservative with your money and stuff and not spending a ton, then sales tax can actually be a lower tax rate for you. Okay. Then there's local tax. We have to pay for things locally, our schools, roads and things like that. So how does our local Henderson, it's like where I live in Henderson, how does Las Vegas, how does North Las Vegas, how do they get their tax? There's a couple different ways. Property taxes. So if you own a property, a house or a business or a residence or something like that, you pay a percentage of the value, okay? And the higher the value, the more you pay. And that goes to your local county and city. Gas tax, also oftentimes a portion of the gas tax will go toward the local county and city, okay? And then some of the taxes built into sales tax, a percentage of that is county and a percentage of that is state, okay? So when you go buy a car, when you go buy groceries or, go out to dinner or something like that, your county or city, sometimes depending where you spend it, can get a little small portion of that. But majority of income in cities and counties comes from property taxes and some of those smaller taxes. okay? So you don't pay for it from your paycheck, you pay for it when you go out and spend, or if you own a property or something, then you pay for it there. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna be working on, this is our last assignment or couple of assignments that are due for the quarter. It's gonna be 9.4, which is understanding tax. Okay, so let's go ahead and open the notebook and course arc and we'll get started. We're gonna work on a big portion of it today. It's technically due tomorrow, but I will spend some time in class on Wednesday finishing up the notebook course arc and review a little bit, okay? So at the end of class, I'll talk to you about how I would structure your time because Thursday's going to be a total study hall in class. Friday, nothing's due. It's a catch-up day. And then Monday is the last day to turn in anything for the quarter. So that's why tomorrow's the last due date. And then that gives you another 6 days to get that in and anything else you still need to get in, okay, before it closes. All right, so let's jump over into Canvas. So go ahead and get your Canvas open. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go into announcements. And I just want to bring to your attention what is still open for you to do. Miss Carter just sent it to you. All right, so March 6th is the deadline. What is still open? Okay, so this will save you from having to email me 100 times, okay, or ask me 100 times, though some people still will. What can I still turn in? What can I do to get my grade up, okay, and stuff. Oh, and I love it when I find a typo after I already posted it. Isn't that fun? It doesn't do spell check in the announcements, and so it sometimes there's a typo and I miss it. All right. So what is still open to you? Okay. This one I want to bring your attention to. 9.1 quiz is open till tomorrow. So if you haven't done that, I would get that done tomorrow for sure. The notebook course arc already closed, but the quiz I left open an extra week so you can earn some points there. The EverFi Marketplace assignment is open until the 6th. Okay. So next Monday. Module 9, Lesson 2 is open. So that's the course arc, the EverFi Economy assignment, and the Zombie Project. So a lot of points here. The EverFi Economy is 25. Zombie Project is worth 50 points, and that's in the summative category. Last Friday, we had 9.3 open. So that's all going to be open till the 6th. And then tomorrow, the course arc notebook quiz for 9.4, those are open till the 6th, okay? So 9.1 quiz, that's closing, but everything else that's listed is open until Monday. Now, this Monday, March 6th deadline is for all of your classes, no exceptions, okay? So make sure that if let's say you're doing well in this class, but your English class or math or I don't know what other class you might be in, make sure you're getting those assignments in, okay? Because this is the deadline for all of NVOA, all right? So make sure that you're getting your work in. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, in the chat, tell me what's the deadline for all work? Yes, Module 9, Lesson 4 is the last thing for, not semester, quarter, right? We still have fourth quarter, sorry. Sorry, still got to do the fourth quarter. Okay, yes, I know, right? We're all
Teachers anxious for break.
I know, right? And we cruise, right? And we cruise. Okay, yes. So March 6th, yes, okay? So mark that down. That's all your classes. So whether or not your teacher's bringing it up, that is the deadline, okay? So, and that's not me picking on you. That's me trying to like let you know so that if you need to get your act together, this is your official notice. Get your act together, okay? If you need a kick in the pants, get it done. You know what I'm saying, all right? I love you, but you know what I mean. Like, let's go, okay? All right. You guys know what I'm saying. Okay. You know what's up. All right. You're like, yeah, I procrastinated. Okay. Let's go ahead and get things open. We're going to be in 9.4 today. Go ahead and open up your notebook. Once you open it, then remember we rename it, make it shareable, and save it to the Google Drive. Okay. So anyone with the link, save it to your Google Drive and rename it. Okay. So get that open and we're going to work on that today. Once you have that open, then we're going to go to the next page in Canvas and we're going to open up the course arc, right? So you're going to click on that blue tab, get that open. And we need to have the course arc and the notebook open. So course arc and notebook open. Those two things need to be open. Go ahead and give me a yay when you have both open. I'm going to give you quite a bit of time in class to catch up on things. Thursday, like I said, it's literally going to be a study hall. You come, log in for attendance, and you work. Okay, and me and Miss Carter will be here to help you if we need to break off on things. Friday, nothing's due. It's just catching up. Monday in class will be a total study hall. Okay, like again, getting it together. And if you're done with stuff in this class, you can work on stuff for another class. But I don't want to hear then on the 7th, because this is what happens, right? This is why teachers get irritated, right? I'm all about helping you. And then on Tuesday, the 7th, right, I get an email. I didn't get this in. Can you open it? And I'm going to be like, are you kidding me? Right? I gave you 2 full days in class. So we're going to use that time wisely, but the cutoff is the cutoff, right? Making sure we get stuff done. And if you're good in this class, then you can use that time for other classes. But this class first, if you're good in this class, then I am totally fine if you work on stuff for other classes, because I want you to do well in all your classes. You know, this class obviously, but it's all your classes are important. Okay. If you need to check your grade really fast, right? Go to the grade tab. All right, and click on. I'm not going to click on this because it'll show everybody in class's grade, and I'm not trying to do that. And so, but you click on that, and then it will show you if something's late, what your score is, or if you got the minimum F. All right, so what you still need to turn in. So if you're confused what you need to turn in, go look at it. All right, and go look at that, and do that in all your classes. It'll tell you your most current grade. Remember, Canvas is more accurate than Infinite Campus, so always rely on Canvas, and then see what needs to be in. Okay, or that you can still turn in from that list. All right, let's get started. So we are talking about understanding our taxes, okay? And we're heading into tax season. Taxes are due April 15th. Speaking of that, I actually have to, it's on my list. I need to email my CPA, my accountant, and arrange to drop off all my tax info and stuff like that. So, because I got about 6 weeks till taxes are due. So we're going to kind of go over the levels of tax, some of the structures of tax. What are some of the philosophies? Where do all of our tax money go? What's the purpose of paying tax? Okay. And understanding that the different levels, federal, state, local tax. Okay. And depending on that level, there are different systems. So federally, we pay a progressive tax, state, we pay proportional. And so there's different levels depending on what you're paying into. So let's jump into it. So taxes and spending. So the question we're going to be asking, can and should the government be fair to everyone? Can and should the government be fair to everyone? Because the reality is there's going to be a lot of debate who should pay taxes and at what level. Okay? Who should pay taxes and at what level? I mean, the reality is we all have to pay taxes. We're going to live here. We're going to enjoy the services, things like that. You got to pay for it. This is why the older generation gets on the younger generation a little bit once in a while when everybody says, well, I want the government to do it. Who's going to pay for that? Because guess who funds the government? You and I when we start working. So the question always is, who's going to pay for it? Nothing is free. So everything the government does, guess where they get their money? They can't just print money. They have to tax us, right? So the question becomes, and this is why econ is so important, and the lesson is, my wants and needs are unlimited, but the ability to meet them is limited. The government cannot meet every want and need that you have. There's just not enough money. There's just enough money. And at some point, you're going to want to keep some of your paycheck. You know what I mean? You're going to be like, I worked for that. Why do you keep taking it? So the debate always is, to what extent do we pay taxes, or what level should we pay taxes? And there's a lot of debate on that. Everyone agrees you got to pay taxes to an extent. You got to think if we want to have roads, we want to have services, military, we want to have first responders, we want to have schools, we want to have these different things. They have to be paid for some way. But the big question, how much do they take? Yes, how much should the government take care of? Because they can't take care of everything. So, and this is then where the debate of Democrat, Republican, or liberal, conservative, like where people kind of fall on the spectrums of how much money do we put into systems and how much personal responsibility do I have to pay for that? You know what I mean? And then that gets into, a lot of times people's political philosophies. All right. So copy paste, put that into number 1. And then let's move on to vocab. Okay, so let's do the matching and then we'll fill in the chart. Okay, so a tax for which a percentage of income is paid of tax remains the same at all income levels. Okay, so this is proportional tax. So, for example, sales tax is like that, income tax like so. A lot of state taxes are proportional tax, where you pay the same rate despite your income. So, if I make $1 million a year or I make $10,000 a year, I'm going to pay 8.25% sales tax on whatever I spend. So it's the same percentage despite income. Okay. Oftentimes, income tax is like that. Like at a state level, they'll take a flat rate. Okay. Organs like that, they take a flat rate, 11% off the top for everybody. Okay. Federal taxes are different though. Federal taxes, we'll talk about that. So taking payments out of people's checks before they receive it. This is withholdings. So our federal taxes are withheld. So when you get your check, when I get my check twice a month, some federal taxes have already been kept out for. We don't pay Social Security, but a lot of people Social Security, Medicare, and just general tax. All right. A variable amount of taxes may be subtracted from the gross income. Okay, this is tax deduction. So when you go to pay taxes, everyone's goal is to make their income look. So here's the two goals. During the year, you try to make as much as you can. And then when you go to pay taxes, you want to try to make it look like as little as you can. So I know you're like, wait a minute. You want to make as much as you can, but then you want to make it look like you made as little as possible, because the more you make, the more you pay taxes. So this is why you use those tax systems, or you go to accountants or something like that. They try to find what's called deductions to help bring down the taxable income. So let's say I make $100,000 in a year, which I don't, but let's just say, all right, as a teacher, don't go into teaching, you won't make six figures. Okay. So let's say that I made $100,000. So yay, I made $100,000, but I don't want the government to tax me on that 100,000. So I'm going to try to find ways to deduct to make my income look lower. So maybe using my kids, or expenses, things I use for my job. I do medical expenses. I'll deduct it. Maybe I'll try to get my income down to $80,000. So I only get taxed on $80,000 when I really made $100,000. So there's always deductions out there. Depending if you own your own business, there's a lot more deductions versus if you work for someone. But everybody's always trying to make their income look lower. So you want to make as much as possible, but make it look like you pay. Okay, progressive tax. So federally, we pay what's called a progressive tax. So the more you make, the higher the percentage. Okay, the more you make, the higher the percentage. So our federal tax is a progressive tax. So if you make $20,000 a year, you pay like 15%. If you make over $100,000, I think it's 30 or 31%. And then it's graduated in between 20 and 25, and it goes up. So the more you make, the more percentage you pay. All right, let's jump over to our notebook. Okay, so a tax for which the percentage is the same across the board, that's proportional tax. Everybody pays the same proportion. So oftentimes state taxes will look like that. Like income or sales tax are often that sort of tax system. Income tax or sales tax is a proportional tax. No matter what your income, it's not like when I go to pay at the restaurant, they're like, what do you make a year? And then they adjust the sales tax. Everybody at the restaurant pays the same amount of sales tax, right? Based on their bill, whether they're rich or poor or somewhere in the middle. Okay, withholdings, that's when it's automatically taken out of your paycheck. Always. So I'm telling you, every time I get a raise, then I'm like, yeah, I got a raise. Miss Carter, right? I got a raise. And then I look at my check. I'm like, where's the money? I swear it goes into
like, who took my raise?
I'm telling you, at a certain point, making more money doesn't always make you more money.
No, the more you make, the poorer you are.
I swear,
I really feel that.
Right at that level right now, like where it's because he keeps getting opportunities, and I'm like, stop, it's not helping.
Mm-hmm. So, we're giving more away.
At a certain point, you end up doing that. You really do. You're almost penalized for making more.
And then if you spend your whole year, ooh, is that a deduction? Ooh, is that a deduction?
Yes, or like the purpose of making more, and you end up really not making more. So
yeah, you wind up paying more than you ever did, and you're like, but I'm making more than I ever did. Well, duh.
It's funny how it works. Don't worry, you all will see. Your day's
coming. It's coming.
It's coming. Welcome to
adulthood. Well, there is a limit, though. You don't get taxed. Most students are realizing that their taxes they don't really have to pay because they make under that $4,000 limit.
Yes, if you're working part-time and not making a lot of
Mhm.
money, but once you start actually actively getting out there and working, it's pretty quick to go past that $4,000. If you're working 20 hours a week consistently, you'll go past it real fast. All right, progressive tax, so that's what we pay federally. The more you make, the more you pay. And that's percentage. So it's not like a set amount, it's percentage. All right, and then regressive tax, this is an interesting one. And this is a tax for which the percentage of income paid in tax decreases as income increases. And oftentimes, sales tax can have this impact because you pay the same, yet you end up paying a lower percentage of your overall. So, sales tax sometimes can, depending on how much the person spends, can come out that way. Property taxes can also come out that way. You pay more the more value your property, but percentage wise.
Yeah, and then they have these caps. I always get confused about the
Yeah,
caps they put
like
on
I said,
everything.
I'm not an accountant, so
Yeah,
some of this we're gonna go over basic definitions, but
yeah.
like this is why you hire people to do your
And
taxes.
that's exactly what I do. I do not do. I. That's my first deduction of the year when I see
Yep,
my tax man.
yep, exactly, exactly. Okay, let's move on, and we'll jump into the next slide. Okay, the importance of national tax. Why do we pay taxes? All right, the reality is we can't have the systems we have. We can't have roads. We can't have education. We can't have defense. We can't have 911 first responders without taxes. Okay, the government has to get their money from somewhere. And this has been since the American Revolution. So let's watch the crash course, and I will do number 3 while we do that. Okay, and then we'll discuss it. So, what is the purpose of taxation?
Hi, I'm Adrienne Hill. This is Crash Course Economics, and today we're going to talk about taxes. We're going to talk about why we have taxes, what they do for us, and why you should go ahead and take that raise that's going to bump you into the next tax bracket. Also, rebellions and the British Empire's bad judgment when it came to taxing colonies. While your struggles with taxes and the tax code may seem particularly unpleasant to you today, people have been paying and complaining about taxes for a long time, way longer than any of us have been alive, or our parents, or our grandparents. Ancient Mesopotamians paid taxes in the form of livestock and labor. There are ancient Egyptian texts and tomb scenes showing evidence of taxes, tax collectors, and even tax shelters. Taxation and tax collectors also show up in the Bible over and over. Taxes appear in Scripture as a necessity, like render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's. And tax collectors are in there as sinners right up with prostitutes. More recently, in 1927, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote, "Taxes are what we pay for civilized society." Maybe it's time we forgive tax collectors, too. So we've had taxes pretty much as long as we've had records of organized society. But why? What are the goals of taxation? At the most basic level, taxes raise money for government services. Taxes are used to promote the well-being of society, at least well-being as defined by the government in power. They help us afford services markets might not pay for on their own. Things like public safety and national defense and education. Taxes can be used to protect the environment. They can help a country implement fiscal and monetary policies meant to push along economic growth. Taxes can be used as a way to redistribute wealth in a society, from people who have more to people who have less. This can happen in a couple of ways, some more direct than others. An income tax system that taxes high-income earners at a higher rate than low-income earners is one example, and we'll come back to that. Government subsidies and vouchers, like food stamps and housing programs, also shift wealth. So do luxury taxes, basically an additional tax bill on expensive items like jet planes, expensive furs, and that really annoying diamond ring space on the Monopoly board. Governments can also use taxes to try to change people's behavior. Sin taxes on not good for you products like cigarettes and alcohol are meant to reduce consumption of unhealthy products. Gasoline taxes are meant to encourage people to drive less. France France passed soda taxes to try to get people to drink fewer sugary drinks. Denmark passed and then got rid of a fat tax on foods that were relatively high in saturated fat. A handful of governments, including those in British Columbia, Ireland, and Chile, have instituted carbon taxes. These carbon taxes basically charge businesses and sometimes households for the amount of polluting greenhouse gases they use or create. These carbon taxes take different forms around the world. Residents of British Columbia, for example, pay an extra 6.67 cents per liter of gasoline as a carbon tax. For those of us in the US, Myanmar, and Liberia who don't use the metric system, that's about 25 cents per gallon. In Chile, power plant operators pay $5 for every metric ton of carbon dioxide that they release into the air. When economists talk about taxes, they sometimes divide them into direct taxes and indirect taxes. Direct taxes are paid by a person or organization to the government body that imposed the taxes. These include property taxes and income taxes, where there's no intermediary, and I can't pass off the tax burden to someone else. Value-added taxes and sales taxes aren't exactly the same thing, but they're both good examples of indirect tax. They're collected by a store or seller or producer of goods, but they're actually paid by consumers. They're taxes that all consumers have to pay, regardless of how much money they make. A pair of socks at the mall down the street is going to cost me exactly the same as when a billionaire buys that pair of socks at the same store. Some economists say indirect taxes distort market prices and lead to one of the things most dreaded by economists, the Voldemort of economic outcomes: inefficiency. Economists also characterize taxes as regressive, progressive, and proportional. Let's start with regressive taxes. Regressive taxes are typically applied across the board, and on their face they might seem equitable because everyone pays the same amount. But regressive taxes take a higher toll on people with lower income than high income earners. Sales taxes, especially on essential items, are considered regressive. That's why some places exempt food and prescription drug purchases from sales taxes. Some economists argue that fees for things like hunting licenses, toll roads, and driver's licenses are also regressive. Why? Well, imagine two drivers go to the Department of Motor Vehicles to get a new license. One makes $200,000 a year, the other makes $20,000. Both will pay exactly the same amount for their driver's license. The license fee is a much bigger hit for the lower income driver. And that's why regressive tax takes a disproportionate toll on people with lower incomes. On the other end of the taxing spectrum, there are progressive taxes. Progressive taxes are more or less the opposite of regressive taxes in that they shift the burden of taxation to people who make more money and away from those who make less. In the United States, our income tax is a progressive tax, meaning individuals pay more in taxes as they make more income. But before you start worrying about whether making an extra $100 this year is going to bump you into a higher tax bracket, it's worth understanding how the progressive income tax in the United States works. When the IRS calculates how much you owe in taxes, it uses marginal income tax brackets based on the amount of taxable income you earned in a year. These marginal tax rates represent the highest possible income tax rate you could pay. Right now, there are 7 tax brackets. But no matter which tax bracket you find yourself in, you're not going to pay that rate for your entire income. Instead, your taxable income gets divided up into chunks that correspond to each tax rate, and you pay the associated rate on each of those chunks. For example, say you made $37,450 as a single filer last year. That would put you in the 15% tax bracket, but you'd still pay the lower 10% rate on the first $9,225 you made. So if you took the extra $100 and made $37,550, you'd be bumped up to the 25% tax bracket. But again, you'd only pay 25% on that extra $100. Your effective tax rate would be lower. The other thing you got to keep in mind with U.S. income taxes is there are a huge number of tax credits, tax exemptions, and tax deductions that reduce the amount people owe. So your tax bill will never be as painful as that 25% tax bracket might make you think. Many other countries around the world have their own progressive income tax systems, but it turns out it's difficult to measure just how progressive any country's total tax system is, especially compared to another country. It's not as easy as looking at countries with the highest marginal tax rates and deciding they have more progressive tax policy, because so many other taxes and tax breaks come into play. In the US, some economists argue the progressiveness of our income tax code offsets the regressiveness of many other taxes we pay. if progressiveness and regressiveness are even words. So we've covered regressive and progressive taxes. The third type of taxes are proportional taxes. Proportional taxes require the same percentage of income for all taxpayers, regardless of how much they make. A flat tax is an example of a proportional tax. You'll hear politicians touting flat taxes, in part because they're relatively simple compared to the US's current incredibly elaborate tax code, and because they kind of feel fair. Imagine a flat tax of 10%. The woman making $200,000 ends up sending $20,000 to the government, while the guy making $20,000 sends only $2,000. They both feel a 10% pinch. Economists who oppose the flat tax say that feelings have no place in the tax code. They argue a flat tax isn't as simple or as fair as it seems. For one, they say that getting rid of all the tax deductions and exemptions and credits we mentioned earlier could change a whole lot of the economic decision-making that happens, from saving for retirement in tax-protected accounts to home ownership and donating to charities. All those activities are encouraged by the tax code we have now. Like we mentioned before, there are economists who argue the progressive income tax in the US offsets some of our other more regressive taxes. They say a flat tax would shift the total tax burden away from the wealthy to the lower and middle classes, actually making our broader tax policy more regressive. All of this is complicated, even if it sounds simple. Before you buy into anyone's plan to reform the tax code, take the time to really read into what it might mean to the economy, and make sure you're comfortable with all the implications. Speaking of implications of tax policy, they can be incredibly serious and fascinating. A poor tax choice by a government can and has resulted in rebellions. Let's go to the thought bubble. One tax rebellion you've probably heard of is the American Revolution. After the 7 Years' War ended in 1763, Great Britain had a huge debt to pay off. It needed to raise revenue from somewhere and look toward the colonists in America. In 1764, the British Parliament started taxing molasses sales. In 1765, they enacted the Stamp Act, which added taxes to paper and legal documents. Colonists grew more and more frustrated with British officials, both with tax policies and other interventions. Anyway, you know how it goes. No taxation without representation, Boston Tea Party, a big war, the French get involved, and we end up with a free America, with taxes and representation, except in Washington, D.C. More recently, in India, there was another super interesting tax rebellion called the Salt March. In 1930 India, the British were in charge, and they had laws in place that outlawed Indians from collecting or selling salt. Instead, they had to buy it from a British monopoly, which collected an 8.2% salt tax. Mohandas Gandhi decided to defy the Salt Act by walking 240 miles to the coast of the Arabian Sea to gather tax-free salt. Along his route, more and more Indians joined him in the peaceful civil disobedience. He got to the beach, picked up a piece of salt, and broke the law. Thousands of others followed his lead, making and selling non-British salt in a non-violent resistance. The Salt March was extensively covered in newsreels and newspapers, and it brought international attention to the largely non-violent Indian struggle for independence. All that because of taxes. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Of course, there are other ways to get around paying taxes you don't want to pay, other than fighting or starting a mass civil disobedience movement. Based on historical documents, we know people have been running away from paying taxes for years, some literally picking up and leaving their homes. Other people have discovered career paths that get them out of tax bills. Historians think that some European men became monks during the Middle Ages to avoid being taxed. There's proof that some Chinese men joined Buddhist monasteries to get out of paying taxes. There is plenty of room for disagreement over how big government should be and what it should and shouldn't be doing. All those discussions matter to you as a taxpayer and as someone who benefits from taxation and government services. But as we've said time and time again, there are some services the market just won't provide, some protections it won't guarantee. No one likes paying taxes, but we do like what they do for us. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Thanks for
So I think the last line really kind of sums it up. Nobody's excited to pay taxes, but the reality is that we all, to an extent, enjoy those services, right? You're enjoying one of them now, public education. Me and myself and Miss Carter wouldn't get paid unless it was for taxes. Our jobs are funded through taxes. So almost a third of our economy is funded through government jobs, government services. So not only does it provide services to people, let's say like education, we'll use this example, but it also provides jobs, myself and Miss Carter and all the people that are in. So there's things that we appreciate that comes from it. Do I love paying taxes? No, and neither will you. But the trade-off is some of those services, those wants and needs that we have, they can't meet all wants and needs, but some of those being met to some extent. All right, I put 3 and 4 in the chat. We're going to move kind of quick. 3 was, as you read the section, the importance of national tax, consider what might happen if taxes are cut drastically. So the reality is services, okay? Nothing is free. So highways, education, law enforcement, defense, national security, some things like Social Security for retirees, Medicare, medical funding, veteran services, all these different things. We need education. We need, and if you cut taxes, those services are impacted. They are, okay? The importance of a tax. So, why do we consent? Once upon a time, the American Revolution was the fight over how taxes are determined and who should pay those taxes, okay? And the reality is that when you go and you get a job, this is number 4, when you go and get a job, it's not like you check the box, I agree to pay taxes. It's just assumed. If you're going to live in a country, in any country, you're going to pay taxes. So if you're going to live in that country long-term and enjoy those services, you have to contribute to the pot. If no one contributes, then there's nothing to give out. You know what I mean? It's like, think of it as I haven't done number 5 yet. So I will when I get to it. I haven't done number 5 yet. Okay. It's stuff. So moving on to number 5. All right. The importance of national tax. So explain the impact of taxation on the economy. All right. It helps pay for our taxes, help pay for goods and purchases. It's pulled from our paychecks, but it also 1/3 of the government spending goes to jobs. Okay. It provides jobs. So for example, education jobs, people that join the military, first responders, people that work on the roads, so every time there's road construction, those things are paid through taxes. We wouldn't have some medical benefits when you go to the DMV. Those jobs are paid for through tax collection. That's how the government pays those salaries and provides jobs. So I'm a great example of that. I don't like paying taxes, but I wouldn't have a job without taxes. So or at least this job without taxes. You know what I mean? So as much as we don't like paying, I appreciate getting a paycheck, and your parents guardians appreciate. My girls go to public school, so I appreciate the service of education, right? So if I want those wants and needs met, I have to give something into the system in order for it to be met. Okay, I put number 5 there in the chat.
And let's not forget the roads. Here in
yes,
Vegas,
let's say roads.
talk about paving those roads.
Bridges, crosswalks, all those things. They are paid through taxes, and the people that implement those, that put those in, help to pay for that. Okay, let's go to tax structure and tax basis. Right, so I'm going to go back over to our course arc, and I'm going to get to the next page. Okay, so this short video does a really good job of talking about the tax structure. Okay, where does our tax money go, basically? Where does the tax money go? And then we'll finish the last couple on the on our notebook for the day. Okay.
Politicians have their own ideals and plans for how America should be run. And it may not sound like they're talking about money when they're campaigning, but the whole Democrat versus Republican thing is really about where American tax dollars should be going. So before you dive in on either side, it might be a good idea to get a handle on how we the people are currently spending our tax dollars. Before we start, there is a quick thing to note. These numbers are from 2013 and do not include Social Security or Medicare. The money for those programs is determined by the Federal Insurance Contributions Act tax and not the annual budget. So politicians can't do much to change the amount of taxes that go to those programs. Here are the programs that the federal budget does touch. Around 8 cents on every dollar goes toward paying interest on our debt. This is another one that's largely non-negotiable, but it's a significant amount and worth mentioning here. 17 cents out of every dollar is spent on government programs like subsidizing and supporting agriculture, commerce, transportation, and governmental administration, or on science and space technology, things like NASA and the National Science Foundation, international affairs, which includes things like the State Department and all non-military foreign aid. Some of the budget goes to responding to natural disasters or to community and regional development, which includes things like waste disposal and urban development. That 17 cents also goes to the environment, including the Parks Department and managing our natural resources and energy development, or to immigration, border control, and the Justice Department. We also have a program for education and jobs training. All of that combined accounts for the 17 cents out of every income tax dollar. And when you think about how many important programs we just mentioned, it really doesn't seem like a lot. So where is the real money going? Around 50% of our budget goes toward keeping our citizens healthy and out of poverty, which is a pretty good place for it to be. Almost 19 cents on every dollar is spent on jobs and family security. Things like unemployment insurance, food assistance, housing assistance, federal retirement funds, foster care, and temporary assistance for needy families. Veterans benefits also fall into this portion of the budget. They account for an additional 6 cents on every dollar. And healthcare programs like Medicaid, disease control, and numerous others account for an additional 25 cents. Again, that's half the budget. The well-being of our citizenship is something that most politicians can get behind. Something else most politicians can get behind is national defense, which accounts for almost 1/4 of our national budget. But before you get upset about how we are spending almost as much on the military as we are on medical services, let's talk a little bit about where that defense budget actually goes. Yes, the majority of it is spent on building weapons and conducting military operations, but 5.97% of it goes toward personnel salaries and benefits. That 6 cents is literally how we are supporting our troops. Some of that defense budget is also going towards maintaining our nuclear defense capabilities, and another portion of it is going to defense-related FBI activities. Plus, the U.S. military has almost 16,000 square miles of bases and facilities to maintain. So that 24.79% isn't all going towards bombs and invasions. Some of it is just there to maintain the troops, bases, and equipment we already have. If you found this video informative, please subscribe to the show. Subscribing is the
Okay, so I like that video because it gives you just at least a snapshot of where is our federal money going, And the reality is that party to party, so Democrat to Republican, this spending shifts very little. Okay, it really doesn't. It's not like when you have a Republican president, it's 50% to defense, and then you have a Democrat president, it goes to 25%. It shifts maybe a couple percent. Okay, so we do see shifting from party to party, but for the most part, this is a pretty consistent representation of the percentage. The part that throws me, and this is why I really encourage you, try to minimize your personal debt, because when you see that our national income, almost 9% of the money that it collects goes toward interest, and stuff. So in your own life, what you can learn is if you can try to at least minimize some of your debt so that you don't have a huge chunk of your income just going to pay that debt, that's money that isn't really helping you in the current, so it's a little depressing when I hear that amount. All right. Let's look at, so I put number 6 in there. How are progressive, proportional, and regressive tax similar? How are they different? So remember, all of these are taxes and everyone is subject to them. The difference is going to come, progressive taxes, the more you make, the higher the percentage you pay. Proportional taxes, everyone pays the same, right? So the same percentage. So like a sales tax would be an example of that, that no matter what your income, you pay 8.25% on this item or this, aspect or something. Regressive tax, sales tax can also be an example of that. So if I make $100,000 a year versus someone who makes $20,000 a year, but we both pay at the grocery store 8.25% tax, in essence, the person who makes $20,000 a year is going to be paying more of their income. Right? So there's some different ways to kind of see it. But the reality is all of these are taxes, and all 3 of these we see in our tax system. So all 3 of these we see federally, state, or local within our tax system. If you own a property, you pay more taxes, because if you rent, you don't pay property tax on that. If you own or have your property and stuff, then you pay an additional tax. So there's a lot of different things that can go into what you pay. All right, let's look at number 7 really quick, and then I'm going to wrap this up. What is meant when a community is said to have a strong tax base? So a strong tax base is things where, depending on your lifestyle, that you pay taxes on. So a strong tax base often is seen in property. So if you're in an area, high residential area with a lot of single family homes or larger estates, you're going to have a very strong tax base because there's more property to gather taxes from, versus, let's say, an area that's dominantly apartments. So it's more rental. So you have lower property tax because there's not as many properties to collect taxes on. So a lot of it will be based on maybe the amount of businesses or individual properties in that area. So less individual properties usually is not as strong of a tax base. More individual properties and businesses will lead to a stronger tax base because there's more property tax to collect. All right. Really quick. So it says to check your understanding and mastery of the content in this section, select what percentage of income tax does each earner show. It's going to be 15, 21, 23. Here they messed up though. It is actually 15, 25, and 30. I don't control the answer key on this program. So somebody did it wrong. So the right answer should be 15, 25, 30%. So for example, first 25%, first 25,000, you make 15% of it. 25 to 50,000, 25%. Over that, 30%. So it keeps going up, but they did their answer key wrong. But just select that one so that you get it right, because I can't go in and change, unfortunately, the answer key on that. Okay. All right, let's wrap this up. So really quick, what can you turn in? What can you still turn in? Module 9, lesson 1, the quiz, okay, is open till tomorrow. So if you haven't done that, get that done. Everything else, 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, and 9.4 are open until next Monday, okay? So I would go through and make sure that you are doing the EverFi assignments. Make sure that you're doing the course arc, the zombie project. That's worth 50 points. Make sure that your stuff from Friday gets done. And then obviously course arc, notebook, and quiz, which are technically due tomorrow, but I will spend some more time on it on Wednesday. So on Wednesday, we'll do a little bit more. Here's the review sheet for 9.3. I'll spend some more time on Wednesday, going over the notebook, course arc a little bit more. I'll do 8, 9, and 10. And then I'll review a little bit more for the quiz. But if you want to work ahead, get it done, you are welcome to use that review sheet. Okay, so tomorrow, technically 9.4 is due, though I will spend some more time on Wednesday, and you'll have Thursday. You can get it done in class as well if you want, okay? Small group tomorrow, 1:20 to 2:15. So if you need anything, come see me in the afternoon. I'm more than happy to help you. And that code is on the homepage, and I will put it in the announcement, okay? Have a wonderful day. I will see you on Wednesday. And if you need anything, let me know. Get your work in. That May 6th, 1 week. All right?
I know. It's coming up fast.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Ms. Hall.
Bye, Ms.